Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion.
Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I am Farrukh Pitafi. Viewers, once again we are going to talk about Pakistan's politics. There seems to be a lot of development today because it seemed that the government and the opposition were at loggerheads, and there was a possibility of this being taken to a new level. But today, in an honorable court, the Supreme Court, the government of Pakistan actually took back the complaints regarding Mia Shehbaz Sharif and took its case away, took it back. On the other side, in the Senate also, there was quite visibly a confrontation between People's Party and PMLN. That seems to have been resolved because both parties have accepted their seats on the standing committees. That is quite interesting development. We are going to actually talk about that as well. Whether Shehbaz Sharif is allowed to go abroad or not, we are going to discuss that too, because while the case might have been withdrawn, we know that his name still is on exit control list, not on blacklist, but exit control list. We are going to talk about that as well. Meanwhile, let me also tell you what Prime Minister said today. Prime Minister actually said Pakistan will rise faster next time the PTI comes to power. That is one thing. And then I hope we can put up the cards also, just to point out what the Prime Minister actually said. Right, this is the first card. Pakistan will rise faster next time the PTI comes to power, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Let us show the second card. Our opponents are raising a hue and cry, and even when PTI had formed the government in 2018, our opponents said that we were bound to fail. Again, this is also Prime Minister's quote. The third one, last year, our growth rate stood at 0.5%. While this year, the growth rate has reached 4%, and this is troubling the opposition. This is what Prime Minister actually observed today. We are going to talk about these matters also. But the speculation in the media right now is whether there is some kind of thaw. Because if you remember, there was confrontation between PMLN's leadership within the party, and it was thought that there is one hawkish element and one dovish, and now it seems that Shehbaz Sharif's point of view is actually getting traction. We are going to talk about all these matters in order to help us understand these issues. In the studio, I am joined by Javed Sadiq Sahab, senior journalist, anchor, columnist, editor, whatnot. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Amir Hussain also joins us. Amir Hussain Sahab is a political analyst and a columnist. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. On Skype, we are joined by Arif Chaudhry Sahab, who is a legal expert and an expert on constitutional affairs as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Barrister Asad Rahim Khan also joins us, who is not merely an analyst, but also an anchor, a columnist, and then also a legal expert. Thank you very much, sirs, for being part of the program. With your permission, let me bring in Arif Chaudhry Sahab first. Arif Chaudhry Sahab, what happened today in the court? Do you think it indicates some kind of thaw within the system? And secondly, will it allow Shehbaz Sharif to go abroad?
I think it is not going to allow Shehbaz Sharif to go out of the country, because government had passed another order, and that was the order to place name of Shehbaz Sharif on exit control list. So in order to force the government to accept the verdict of the High Court, only way was to, move contempt of court, for which they have shown their reluctance and they are not going to pursue it. And the government has rightly done so, to withdraw their petition, because there was no fun in moving it onward, especially once they have got what they really wanted. So I think, as far as the case of Shahbaz Sharif of going abroad is concerned, for the time being, it is a past and closed transaction to my mind. And, the government, I think, made it successfully, what they really wanted. So the rest will be seen afterwards, but so far things are, settled, and, things have gone in favor of the government, because what they wanted, they achieved.
Right. Barrister Asad Rahim Khan, your take on this, sir?
Thank you so much for having me, Farrukh Saab. I would agree with Faris Chaudhary Saab. This became a question of legal technicalities after certain points, when the government realized that with Mian Shahbaz Sharif Saab's name on the exit control list, it doesn't behoove them to continue fighting this out in the Supreme Court. But I would draw attention to the various questions that the Supreme Court has raised with regards to how the Lahore High Court proceeded in the matter. The Supreme Court not only asked why the Attorney General's office wasn't given enough time, why the government's counsel was not allowed to prepare, why was such a general order issued with regards to Mr. Shahbaz Sharif's permission. It was only after these observations had been passed that the government brought its own position, which was that they wished to withdraw this petition. It would be in the fitness of things that going forward, the high courts are cognizant of the guidelines the Supreme Court has already laid down, and that things are done in a regular way, rather than that judicial proceedings continue to be politicized by various political parties.
Right. This is quite interesting. Let me come to the studio. Javed Sadiq Saab, you have listened to the legal arguments. Let me ask you about the political aspects. One, budget is coming. Two, we saw that all the political parties have internal dissension. Do you think that this is merely a coincidence, or merely a legal thing that has happened, or there is more to it?
Well, there's a more to it, but the dissension that you're talking about in the PDM or the opposition, joint opposition that was created.
Right. Within PDM, then within PMLN,
yes.
Then within PTI also, Jahangir Tareen Group and
yes.
government.
As far as PMLN is concerned, I think people must not mistake that Shahbaz Sharif and Nawaz Sharif are two real brothers. And their political interests are together. I mean, people usually look at it that Shahbaz Sharif is for rapprochement, he is for a kind of reconciliation with the establishment. Yes, he has been holding this line from the very beginning, and one of his associates, former Interior Minister Chaudhry Nisar, too, supported him in those days when Nawaz Sharif had developed a kind of confrontation with the establishment.
Right.
Since then, he has been urging his elder brother to basically keep the doors open for talks, for negotiations, for a dialogue with the establishment. But it has not been able, but that approach has not been able to produce positive results from their perspective.
Okay.
So Nawaz Sharif took a confrontational line.
Okay.
He continued agitation, and his daughter also, she was very hawkish in her speeches against the establishment, against the government. And I think in the creation and formation of PDM, Nawaz Sharif and his daughter played a very significant role with the help of Maulana Fazlur Rahman and subsequently the PPP and other parties joining that alliance. But PMLN, I think quite a few of them, I mean the top senior leaders, they support Shahbaz Sharif's narrative that we should have dialogue with the establishment and we should solve the problems through a negotiation rather than confrontation.
Okay.
But his elder brother is of the view that you have followed this policy of reconciliation, rapprochement.
No, I get that. But now the question is what has changed? Because we know Shehbaz Sharif was behind the bars, and then all of a sudden he comes out, and then his point of view actually starts prevailing, right?
But I don't have any solid proof, but some circles, political circles, believe that Shehbaz Sharif has been released, or he was able to get this bail, and subsequently an order from the High Court to move abroad, to go abroad, is also a part of a reconciliation with the establishment, or some kind of understanding with the establishment.
Okay.
But Imran Khan, the Prime Minister, doesn't want him to leave the country.
All right. But with due respect, courts cannot be part of any reconciliation. They do their job as per their mandate.
But one of the participants one of the participants was also talking about High Court. Reprimanded by
Supreme Court actually criticized.
So,
that is true, but that is a matter of interpretation. Your take, sir.
Well, I think there are multiple aspects of this particular way of dealing with the opposition. PTI has shown some political symbolism as well.
Okay.
I think this is legal. The legal dimension is important, but also we have seen for the first time that PTI is going to come up with a split up engagement. Let us sit together and see what are the things that are going forward.
Okay.
And
who is doing that? PTI.
PTI is taking some sort of, the government has some realization, because they have come to a point where they have to show something.
How do you conclude that?
Well, I think the way Shehbaz Sharif initially with government was, we have also seen in the past that government has been doing a lot of legal things and bringing politics into legality, and that is we have seen in the past, very recent past.
Right.
But now, when things are moving towards some sort of reconciliatory ground, where government and the government try to bring together different forces from the opposition, which the government thinks are more lenient towards its position to continue.
There is the question. It seems only yesterday Shehbaz Sharif was about to leave the country, and all of a sudden he was stopped, right?
Yeah.
That was also done by the government.
Absolutely.
If you are today saying that the government is going into a reconciliation mode, are you basing that only merely on today's withdrawal of the case or something else?
No, I think there is a lot of discussion going on behind the scene. Actually, we have
since we are sitting in front of the scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to actually ask, what scene are we actually deducing this from?
Well, I think one of the areas when we have seen that PTI in recent days, very recent days, PTI has seen an internal rift within its own ranks, and there is likelihood that when elections are coming very close, those pragmatic, constituency-driven politicians will be, acting on their own, trying to dissuade from the agenda of PTI, which according to the public perception is not performing to the level the people expected from PTI.
Right.
So I think this is the time that we have seen a lot of changes within the attitude of the Prime Minister and the top leadership of PTI. They are saying that, well, we are doing now more tangible things, visible things,
right,
building a public perception rather than
But here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen a statement that you can actually call conciliatory coming from the government, with the exception of a letter that the Prime Minister actually asked the Speaker to write, and he wrote it. But that was about electoral reforms, and it was to take place within the Parliament. So there must be something new, because as of today, Shehbaz Sharif's name has not been withdrawn from the ECL.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the one milestone was, of course, the legality, the legal part of the case, which was put before the.
But both our legal experts are saying that already they had accomplished what they wanted to through ECL. So they didn't need to pile
Well,
on.
I think I don't agree totally on this particular, because we have to look at the optics, the public optics of politics.
Okay.
Politics and legal dimensions are not separated completely, because the political
That's
leader,
a good question. Let me actually go back to R.S. Chaudhary Sahab. R.S. Chaudhary Sahab, how important are optics in legal processes?
Nothing doing it so clearly, because, so far we have not seen anything, as my friend is pointing out, on the part of PTI as far as the reconciliation or, change in their mood is concerned. If you just talk about this case and you take it, as an example, so this is not a good example to show that they are in a reconciliatory mood. Because, they find, as I already mentioned, and my learned friend, agreed with me that, they went on to, pass an order to place his name on exit control list after when the judgment was passed by the Honorable Lahore High Court, Lahore. So there were two situations that, the government should have gone to the High Court and filed a contempt application against the government in order to force them to implement the order. Or the other way was that, the government went to, file appeal against the order passed by the High Court. And there, when, as my brother told, informed everybody that, once they faced, I would start for it, sort of, discussion was, of the which could easily, indicate that what was done in, before the High Court, Lahore High Court, was not done in a proper manner. It was in a haste, and, it was in a slipshod manner, bypassing so many things, procedural and, the legal requirements. Then they realized that there was no fun to, follow the case, because even if they could have gone to the, High Court, so all these observations would have been on their way. So at that point in time, a right decision on the part of the government was to say that we don't want to follow this case, we don't want to move on, because they had got their purpose done, through the fact that no contempt application was being moved against them, and saying thereby that, all what they wanted has been accomplished. So reconciliation, I don't think though it is written in the dictionary of Imran Khan, because since we are watching, for last 3 years, till today, even if you remember in the last program when, I told that, we were expecting that after 2.5 years, if Imran Khan is making a speech, especially, once his opposition is now split and they cannot pose a serious threat. So we were expecting that they say, hey, now enough is enough. We are now going to, show our performance, because, we have to go to the elections, and elections require your actual performance in the field, not, the rhetoric and all these speeches and, this mantra of dequiets and the looters or plunders. So, but unfortunately, we didn't see that. Even at that point in time, we saw his assertion and the re-emphasis on all what he was, maintaining prior in time. So I don't think that they have anything in their mind, this political party, Imran Khan or his friends or associates, because all those associates are trying to show their loyalty to, more than the king himself. And they know that their king is always in a confrontational mood, in a fighting mood as a hero. So they really want to be in his good books. So this party, whatever they face, in terms of political music, they are not going to budge, and they are not going to come to, any sort of reconciliation at all.
Any kind of reconciliation at all. Barrister Asad Rahim Khan, let me ask you about another fact. It is quite open a secret that there is a kind of war of succession between Hamza Shahbaz and Maryam Nawaz. and there seems to be some kind of tug of war going on between Mariam and Shehbaz Sharif. They have different narratives. Recently, we heard that Shehbaz Sharif was talking about some kind of national dialogue, and then we heard that Mia Nawaz Sharif is going to mull over that idea. That means, in the end, if Mia Nawaz Sharif is going to make the call, do you think that Shehbaz Sharif's pitch has succeeded? And that's why, all of a sudden we have started seeing temperature in the system coming down?
No, Farrukh Saab has succeeded at all, to the extent that Mia Nawaz Sharif Saab has brought in a very calibrated amount of ambiguity as to how the succession should happen. I think most of the PMLN's rank and file is being kept on ice. There is a reason he is not expressly coming out in favor of his daughter, and yet you do not see him actively reaching out to Shehbaz Sharif Saab or favoring his narrative. I find it rather unfortunate that the second largest political party in this country, its succession is limited to either Mia Saab's daughter or Mia Saab's brother. But if events in 2017 are any indication, when Mr. Nawaz Sharif did a press conference, everybody was there, all of the senior leadership, in which it was explicitly mentioned that Shehbaz Sharif would be taking up the leadership of the PMLN at the federal level. After a dramatic walk back that we've been seeing over the past 4 years, with Ms. Mariam Nawaz being front and center in the electoral campaign, it is quite clear that conceptually it is Mariam Nawaz who will lead, and it is Ms. Mariam Nawaz who will set the tone with regards to the other senior gentlemen in the party, whether that's Mr. Abbasi, whether that's the Father brothers, whether that's other people who have been around Mr. Sharif. But I would still say, though, that the issue of, there is a split between Ms. Mariam and Mr. Shehbaz Sharif is a bit of a luxury issue, because they do not differ too much on practically any policy operative, except for whether or not to be close to the establishment or to come out against them. For the average Pakistani, it makes almost no difference.
Yeah, but publicly you must have noticed the war of words that went on. Shehbaz Sharif was continuously pitching on television that he is going to go and hold his brother's feet. And then Shahid Khan Abbasi was constantly criticizing that position, despite the fact that Shehbaz Sharif is the president of the party. So there is something going on, right?
Well, it's a strange situation, Farrukh Sahab, that Mr. Shehbaz Sharif Saab, who is touted by the PMLN as a very effective administrator, as a very effective political operator, has not been able to carve out a vote bank that is independent of his brother. To the extent that there is any vote bank, it seems to be transferred more and more in Ms. Mariam Nawaz's direction. The PMLN is also now taking on, in terms of its policy, in terms of how it sees itself, in terms of what the future holds, Ms. Mariam Nawaz Sharif's outlook. So, considering that the electorate has never actually registered Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, has only ever voted for Mr. Nawaz Sharif, I don't see how this pitch or how these televised interviews and these calls to reason are going to work for Mr. Shehbaz Sharif Saab. He remains and always has been an adjunct of his elder brother.
Right. And that is quite interesting. Let me come back to Javed Sadiq Saab. Javed Sadiq Saab, two aspects. One, let me actually borrow from your idea that you actually projected earlier. The civil military and the establishment and political parties relationship. What exactly, if it is true that the establishment also wanted some kind of thaw in the system, what was actually affecting that decision? How did they actually come about this decision?
The establishment's primary objective has always been a national reconciliation, national unity. Given the situation that Pakistan is confronting external security challenges and internal challenges as well, I think the military's perspective or the establishment's perspective is that we need peace within and peace without.
Right.
So that is...
And the external factors might have played a role.
Exactly. And the other concern with the military and the establishment is Pakistan's weak economy.
Okay.
And General Bajwa, recently when he had meeting with anchor persons, maybe you were there or not, he urged, he emphasized that Pakistan needs to rejuvenate its economy so that we are respected as a country in the comity of the nation.
Okay.
So that is one concern of the establishment, that this temperature, political temperature in the country should be brought down.
Okay.
But Mr. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister's narrative is, or his viewpoint is, that he is not going to compromise on the question of accountability, because the very...
hang on. You could just reference some statement about economy, although it was off the record, a meeting if it was. So
everything is now in open.
Yeah, but it is never came on the record, right? So we don't know what exactly was said on the economy, but regarding economy, last year, the Prime Minister just mentioned that last year the growth was 0.5% and now it is 4%. In the season when a mammoth like India has actually witnessed a shrinking economy of somewhere around 7.3%. So we are doing okay.
Yeah, we are doing okay, but obviously we need to basically zip up the rate of growth in Pakistan. So that is the reason I think the military or the establishment or all other people, our stakeholders, want peace within. They want reconciliation. They don't want internal fight. They don't want rallies on the roads, violence, and these kind of things. They want that the country should be at peace within. So that the economic growth, the 4%.
Why would anything going on inside on the streets? How will that impact Pakistan's security?
It always had a very negative impact on the economy and the economic growth of Pakistan.
Okay.
Therefore, I think it is very important. These stakeholders are thinking on those lines, that there should be a reconciliation, a understanding, rather than increasing the political temperature. And the Prime Minister, you just has shown a card saying that we will be, if the next term comes to the PTI, the growth rate will be higher than this. If he wants to achieve it, then he has to basically rebuild its relationship with opposition at some stage. Otherwise, this confrontation is not going to solve.
Now you're coming to Amir Hussain Saab's point of view, because he was not talking about establishment. He was talking about some kind of impulse coming from within PTI, right? We haven't seen that impulse, have we?
Well, I think there is impulse, absolutely, because I can realize, I can see the PTI is on a very tough terrain right now because of its internal, as we said, strife. But I think what they are trying to reach out to is certain number of people who they think can be negotiated with. This is okay. You can keep on with
who's reaching out to whom?
PTI is reaching out to the soft corners in the opposition and trying to build some inroads.
When?
Well, I think there one of the symbolism that is coming from if you follow the Fawad Chaudhry's 3-4 discussions last week, discussion where he was more lenient towards saying that, well, okay, we are going to trying to make some sense if there are people who can contribute to the larger issues that the nation is facing, so we will welcome them. So
but
that sort of attitude.
That bit is what Fawad Chaudhry has been saying all along.
The
PM is saying what he has been saying all along. Shehbaz Sharif is saying what he has been saying all along. The only factor perhaps is Maryam Nawaz not being that vocal. Perhaps Shahid Khana Abbasi filling that space, but not that vocal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand government and opposition thought, Now, pray explain to me the thought between People's Party and PMLN. Because it seems that on one side, Shahid Khan Abbasi keeps on betraying People's Party. He says that People's Party is no more part of PDM. Shahbaz Sharif says that nobody in PDM, not a single party can actually decide who stays and who goes.
Yeah.
And then he was also trying to actually connect with Yusuf Raza Giddani.
Yeah.
We saw his dinner. And now it seems that PMLN has accepted Yusuf Raza Giddani as the opposition leader, and they have accepted their post, standing committee posts in the Senate.
Yeah.
So what is driving that?
Well, I think in this all political equation, if you look at the position of Pakistan People's Party, they are on very weaker ground in many ways. One was that they just wanted to show to the public that they are doing some sort of realignment, political realignment with the forces, with the powers, the state institutions. But it didn't work that way, because People's Party does not have political mileage. In particular, beyond sin, it doesn't seem to have any future political dispensation. If you want to build a future dispensation beyond 2023, then People's Party does not hold enough water right now. So one way is that...
Why? Hang on. Remember 2008 to 2013? Entire Balochistan, assembly, overnight converted from PMLQ to People's Party, right? In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they have their appetizers, but they work with ANP. And in Punjab, their strong point has always been southern Punjab. Used to be upper Punjab during Bhutto's time, but not later. And that is an area they can always cash on. So they become a national party once again.
Well, I think that did in the last, we have seen that the People's Party has lost its ideological worker in doing so. Okay. Now, most of the disgruntled workers either have swung to a PTI and other parties. So now
in Punjab,
in South Punjab and Central Punjab as well.
Not quite Central Punjab, South Punjab, Central Punjab.
Central Punjab is completely, nobody was ready to
the elite of the Southern Punjab is one group that keeps on changing party whenever party government changes.
It has a nuisance value in the larger political game. But I think People's Party is working, because People's Party considers itself to be a social democratic party, and it has an ideological leaning, and it has an ideological worker which provides the fuel and energy for the party politics. But that seems to have gone away in a bit, and it is acting more like a right-wing party, completely right-wing party. And this is the political legitimacy that is losing. The PPP is losing its political legitimacy, and I think that is one of the... And it is coming to central ground and seeing that, PMLN is right-wing, PPP is acting right-wing. Let's come together, see the common ground.
That means in Pakistan you no more have a left-wing party.
Absolutely, that's gone. That's the end of story.
But let me actually go back to Arif Chaudhry Sahab. Arif Chaudhry Sahab, if you remember, until 2018, at least 17, for 20 years we kept on hearing that it is People's Party which is the most corrupt party, and it has to be probed and tested and tried and this and that. All of a sudden, in past 3-4 years, it seems that People's Party's alleged wrongdoing have disappeared from the scene. Remember that JIT that was actually instituted, and the report that came. We never hear about People's Party any longer. Why would that be?
Asif Ali Zardari was the person who took benefit, and he was the last beneficiary of Bhutto legacy. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, I think, we may agree with him, we may not agree with his policies, but as far as person was concerned, he was a marvelous person, and he was a charismatic leader. So his charismatic leadership created so many diehard workers and followers that I think so far no political party has been able to muster that kind of support and create that kind of clout. But after when he died, and then it was taken over by his daughter, Benazir Bhutto. She also did a lot, and she was also sharing some charisma with our father. And she also had so many supporters and die-hard workers. But after when she died and it was taken over by Asif Ali Zardari, he successfully inducted himself into the government, and then continued governing Pakistan for 5 years through his reconciliation or his policies. Notwithstanding the fact that neither he had any charisma nor he has any actual following. But he was a mastermind,
to actually address
mastermind who could,
I was talking about
who could,
issues, sir.
who could manage people around, for political gains and,
there was a JIT that actually came up with a report on Omni Group and so many other things. And for a second we thought that this might be one of the biggest scandals, the way money was moved and official money, state money was used to borrow further and to buy actually perks. But all of a sudden, all of that has disappeared. All we hear is how corrupt PMLN is, or for that matter, PTI's own JKT group is. We don't hear People's Party. So do they have a magic wand through by using which they have actually made all these things disappear?
One thing good about Asif Ali Zardari is that he is a hard nut to crack as far as the recovery of money is concerned. Once he makes money, he knows nobody on this planet Earth can take that money out of him. He may remain in jail for so many years, but the system, he knows it's not going to, take out anything from him, and because he is the one who has seen the system from, very close. He has seen, the judges, he has seen the prosecutors, and he has played with all of them, one way or the other. So that's why he is so fully confident. And, he never cares, about the cases. No amount of cases can, you may register so many cases against him, but he will feel very comfortable and he will be showing his laughter and his smile. But we should not take
power seems to be
only
quite
one
visible.
sentence. But this doesn't mean that, he can attract people at large. The Hitler people have got against him is, going parallel with his political maneuverability. He may get seats and he may continue, his political power in Sindh. But, he has lost his, political clout in Pakistan, particularly in Punjab and other provinces. And his son, unfortunately, has not been able to show any work which he should have. He has tried to, put his feet in the shoes of his father instead of distancing himself from him in a way, or even for a policy matter, they should have decided that he should not step into the shoes of his son, his father, but should try to distance himself to show some sort of, inheritance clout of, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and, his daughter. But, he has been dumped through his father. And instead of...
There is a reason why I asked this question, Asad Rahim, and that is that while we keep on talking about People's Party's approach and Shehbaz Sharif's approach not working, the approaches to reconciliation, it seems that People's Party's soft power is so much that it managed to do something impossible. I mean, all this optics at least, all these optics seem to have disappeared regarding Omni and all these things. And I understand that he has a killer legal team, former Chairman Senate, former Governor of Punjab, and who knows how many former ministers as well. But despite that, do you think that it is this easy to make things disappear from public consciousness?
Certainly not, Farrukh Saab. I really do think they have a magic wand. As you mentioned, Mr. Khosa and Mr. Naik, as with RF Chaudhary Saab, are leading luminaries of our legal profession. But what People's Party has that nobody else does is an entire province. They have a provincial government, and the center and the people that are in support of the center understand that they cannot go after everyone at the same time, which is why Omni Group does not take up the same amount of headlines as everyone else does. The other part is that Sindh is a bit insular, it is self-contained, and this is in the interest of People's Party. They don't like spilling over onto the federal side. They take, because they're in charge of the entire province, because the government is underneath them, they tend to tie up any loose ends on their own. So you saw with Omni Group and with the fake accounts cases, there were plea bargains, there were deals, there were concessions, and slowly but surely these cases started drifting away from the public imagination. But I will say this, Farrukh Saab, that it is with great dismay, as the gentleman before Arif Saab rightly mentioned, People's Party used to be a national party. It was a party of social democrats. It was a party of Miraj Khalid, Miraj Mohammed, J.A. Rahim, really trailblazing progressives. And to see it now, an empire of organized crime, fake accounts, and what seems to be just a glorified protection racket for Bahria Town, Karachi, it's incredibly dismaying that this is the alternative. When you come to the actual aspect of fiscal corruption, I don't think there's any comparison to be made between People's Party and PMLN.
Actually made the whole thing very easy. You just pointed out a property tycoon and his influence. Incredibly, when you criticize army or any other institution of the country, media actually does cover that, reports that. But whenever you actually mention that tycoon, no media actually wants to touch it with barge pole. So is there a possibility that while we keep on attributing this new environment of reconciliation to Pakistan's permanent institutions, it might be this gentleman who is doing his magic?
Certainly. I think this gentleman has become proof of concept that with enough financial resources and with enough political sway and with influence over civil and military institutions, you can actually institutionalize corruption. You can actually use political parties as